All right, this is the Willamette Week endorsement interview for the 5th Congressional District. We're joined by Congressman Kurt Schrader. Congressman, if you could please start with a brief introduction about yourself, who you are, why you're running again for this seat, that would be great.
My name's Kurt Schrader. I'm the current congressman from Oregon's 5th Congressional District. Runs from most of Clackamas County, all of Marion and Polk counties, all of Lincoln and Tillamook counties, and small portions of Benton and Multnomah County. I've been the congressman for the last 12 years. I was in business before that, started and built my own veterinary clinic, operated that for 34 years. Also started and built a farming enterprise here in Canby, Oregon, my home. Had that I farmed for about 20 plus years now. My son's doing it, growing organic hops here at this point in time. I spent some time in the state legislature. It's a part-time job here in the state of Oregon, so I was still able to keep my veterinary practice going, but gave me some experience for Congress. Raised a family, a blended family now of 8 children. So I think it's good for a person in Congress to have a little bit of experience with the real world in terms of family, real world in terms of jobs, and a little experience in the whole legislative process, because it is much more difficult than I originally thought it was. Proud to work really hard for people here in Oregon. I think I'm very, very effective. I was voted or judged by Washington Post as one of the most effective members of the United States Congress. I work across the aisle. I'm one of the folks that is able to get Republicans and Democrats together to help solve different problems, tough problems that our country faces. And I work hard for Oregon. We were able to work across the aisle with Jimmy Herrera Butler in Washington State to help figure out a way to get rid of those darn sea lions that are eating the salmon at Willamette Falls and Bonneville, and doing all the hard habitat work and millions and millions of dollars that Oregonians and Washingtonians pay to restore our salmon and our fisheries. So we're real pleased to be with everybody. Looking forward to the interview.
Great, thanks. Mark, do you have?
Yeah, Congressman, when we talked to you back before the primary, you reprimanded us a little bit because we were sort of challenging your centrist positions, and your statement was something to the effect of, we don't understand your district. So let's stipulate to the fact that we probably don't understand your district as well as you do. You've been serving that district for a decade, right?
Yep, a little over a decade.
In Congress. Can you talk a little bit about how that district has changed in the 10 years you've been in Congress?
It is still a melting pot district. I think it still represents this country and my state and the travails they see as a whole. By that I mean it's a microcosm of our great state and our country. It is made up of a little over 30% Democrats, a little under 30% Republicans. The vast majority in the middle there are non-affiliated voters. It has some very well-to-do portions, like Oswego's of the world, some West Lynn. It also has some lower income folks on the coast, Tillamook and up in the Cascades, up in the Canyon, for instance, that just had the horrible wildfires. And the different types of people. We have a large Hispanic community. We have a Russian community here, mostly Anglo, of course, but it is a very diverse community, and the ideologies and philosophies are also extremely diverse. I suggest to folks that it'd be a lot better for this country if more districts were like mine. When you rate it in terms of, is it mostly Democrat voting or Republican voting, the voter index is a net zero. In other words, it is very evenly divided district. And I think I'm the person that has represented that well.
But how has that changed over 10 years? I mean, has the district become more Republican? Has there become, in terms of where jobs are, fewer jobs in natural resources, more jobs in high tech? I mean, just what's the changing nature of the district you serve?
I don't think it has changed that much, Mark, to be very honest with you, in terms of the diversity of jobs. Some areas like Milwaukee have gotten more liberal, if you will, more Democratic perhaps, but it was always a very blue section of this congressional district, even before I got here. And the rural areas, which a big chunk of my district is rural. I got the coast with the fisheries. I got natural resources, both agriculture in the valley and forestry in the mountains. That hasn't changed. I think people are pretty much very similar, if you will, to what we saw, I think, 10 years ago in terms of the diversity. It is not like Portland that has seen a huge influx of population. 10 years ago when they did redistricting, Greg Walden's district and mine did not change much in terms of the proportional amount of people. Multnomah and Washington County boomed, obviously. So I don't think it has changed that dramatically, to be very, very honest with you.
Okay.
I wanted to hear a little bit about your perspective on the protests that have been happening in Portland for the last 115-ish days. First, I'd love to hear overall what your take is on that. And more specifically, I'd like to hear your perspective on U.S. Attorney Billy Williams and his handling of this. He is asserting that Portland police officers will remain federally deputized through the end of 2020, despite Mayor Ted Wheeler's perspective on that. I'm just curious to know how you view sort of that dynamic taking place, whether or not you agree with with Billy Williams' approach on all this, or what your stance is there.
Well, I'm leaving Portland to Portland, to be honest with you. I generally try and stay within my wheelhouse of federal or regional issues that affect the 5th Congressional District. Certainly, Portland's a huge presence in the state of Oregon. I feel sorry for the city and its residents. The media, not you guys, of course, implies that it's a one side or the other side issue, and I don't agree with that. I think everyone feels very, very, very concerned that a huge portion of America's population and our state's population feels totally disenfranchised when it comes to the criminal justice system. That's wrong. And we voted on that on the House side in Washington, D.C. We need to do some changes to criminal justice. However, I think most Oregonians, and certainly folks in my district, really respect the first responders and the police for the valuable work the vast majority of them do. I mean, they're the reason a lot of folks didn't die in the wildfires. Those first responders put their own lives and, to a certain extent, their families at risk to protect citizens. So, I don't think it's an either or. How do we blend that? I don't have a brilliant answer for that. We're going to have to dig deep. The racial injustice is a very, very serious issue, but it should not come at the cost of demagoguing the men and women in blue who do a great job keeping us safe for the most part. So, better training, I would assume, better hiring, perhaps like in Eugene, involving more social constructs to deal with some of these situations rather than calling in law enforcement and putting them in a bad spot to begin with. But again, I don't represent Portland proper, and I'll leave that to Mayor Wheeler, the council, and the reps that represent that area.
Great. Mark, do you have a question?
I do, but go ahead.
Okay. I just wanted to follow up on that a little bit more from your wheelhouse. Earlier this summer, President Trump did send in federal agents to Portland to help manage the protests. What was your stance on that? Did you agree with his decision to do that, or did you take issue with that?
That wasn't helpful. I mean, we could see very clearly that, I would say the protests are dying down. I think people still want to make sure that we change our criminal justice system, but some of the vitriol and violence was starting to de-escalate. Then they sent the federal officers in, and that just re-escalated everything. And unfortunately, I think is the reason they're still dealing with a lot of the issues they are today.
Mark, you can go ahead.
Well, Congressman, I would just love it if you could talk a little bit about what the mood is like in Congress right now. I mean, I realize you're on recess, but to our viewers who, are 3,000 miles away and are anxious, I mean, just what is the mood like?
Good question.
You're one of the few Democrats who can converse with Republicans. I'm just wondering, what are the conversations like going on right now?
Well, I think I get the sense we're all very concerned about the hyperpartisanship that pervades our country. Not even so much Congress. I'm on the Energy and Commerce Committee. It's like 50 plus members. And we are not very partisan, to be honest with you. We just passed, 3 weeks ago, a suite of healthcare bills, telecom bills, and energy bills, 30 of them altogether, that were voted out, I think, unanimously. There were some differences on 2 or 3 that we're going to hopefully work out before they come to the floor for a final vote. But we're in Congress less partisan, I think, for the most part. There are, as you guys see on TV, there are certainly those that like to wax eloquent about the one true faith, but most of us try and work together. I think I am personally very disappointed that we couldn't get our bipartisan Problem Solvers Caucus COVID package across the line. I mean, we worked really hard, core group of us, the Problem Solvers Caucus, 25 Democrats, 25 Republicans. We work together, meet together at least once a week. When Pelosi and McConnell and the White House couldn't move on the COVID relief package that's so necessary right now, we tried to encourage them, told them we'd try and have their backs, work with them on parameters, and then finally said, if you're not moving, we're gonna. And we came up with a $1.5 trillion package. It could be boosted up to $2 trillion if the coronavirus got worse, could be reduced down to 1.3 trillion or so if things got better than we anticipate. And White House actually moved on this, Mark, but Pelosi did not. Now, that's a shame. That's a shame. And so that got us discouraged. That got us a little discouraged coming home. That wasn't the message I was hoping to bring. I was hoping to bring the back again, just like with the original CARES package, a great bipartisan vote to spend a lot of taxpayer money we don't really even have. But I think it's necessary to make sure this recovery doesn't stall out, put millions of people out of work, or destroy people's lives.
You're on a subcommittee for health.
Right.
Given the differences of opinion between Republicans and Democrats about health care and Obamacare, I mean, what are you possibly doing on that committee right now?
Well, we're reauthorizing the community health centers, making sure the federally qualified health centers have money, making sure the workforce is still in place, passing opioid relief bills. There's a lot of stuff in the healthcare space we agree on. And even it's interesting, even with regard to the Affordable Care Act, when the Republicans were railing against it a couple of years back when they tried to repeal it and couldn't do it because their own citizens found out it was a pretty good deal for them. Millions of people got health care. They've talked about reinsurance to make sure to spread the risk, those high-risk patients. They talked about low-income subsidies. They talked about state waivers to modify some of the programs to make them more efficient, more effective for their jurisdictions. And that's what we had in the original Affordable Care Act. Those things timed out, if you will, over a period of time. And I think if we talk in that space, we can get together again on it. There are a lot of members in the Energy and Commerce Committee and frankly in Congress that are interested in all those fixes to the Affordable Care Act to make sure middle-class Americans as well as low-income Americans can benefit from it.
But above and beyond those fixes, the Democratic Party and Joe Biden have stated loud and clear that Donald Trump and the Republicans do not have a plan for health care. There's been long talk about we're going to replace ACA with something better, but there is no plan. Yeah. Is that a legitimate criticism? Do the Republicans have no plan? That
is correct. I totally agree with that. There's really no plan out there to replace. They talk about their 4 pre-existing conditions, making sure that they're not a problem. They're for making sure kids get on their parents' health plan. They're for this or for that, but they have no way of setting it up. The Affordable Care Act was fully paid for. That was another myth that some of the Republicans pushed out. It's adding trillions of dollars to our debt deficit. That is absolutely false. It actually reduced our debt and deficit going forward. We did the unenviable task of finding sources of revenue, and it was very difficult to do so. But if you want good government, frankly, the Democratic Party, at least since I've been in the United States Congress, has been more responsible in terms of managing government, the cost of government, than our Republican colleagues have. It's kind of sad. I mean, with Trump in there at this point in time, I mean, they've lost, in my opinion, their center of gravity. There's no regard for the debt and deficit, absolutely none. And that's a shame. You know, we're writing big checks on our kids' credit cards right now. Even the package we came together with was $1.5 trillion. And that's more than we spend in a year on both defense and non-defense discretionary spending. So yeah, I wish there was a little more realistic approach from my Republican. We can't even get a transportation package through, which is a shame. You know, everyone wants transportation. You know, the truckers, auto dealer, they're all okay with raising the gas tax, you know, short-term fix, mind you, but at least it's putting some money into a dwindling highway trust fund. Republicans won't go there. That's a shame, man. I don't get that. It's a cap. I could see you arguing about wasting government. Sure, there always is and always will be. And I work hard to get that down like most people. But for capital improvements, we're eating our seed corn if we don't start building our ports, roads, bridges, and airports. It's not good. The rest of the world, China, are going to outcompete us.
What is a bill you helped pass in the last session that you would say you're the most proud of? And if reelected, going into the next session, what will be your priorities, or what do you want to get going on first?
Well, I'd say the most important bill we worked on was a key portion of the CARES Act, and that's the Paycheck Protection Program. And the economic injury loans that small businesses are relying on to keep people employed and just stay afloat at this point in time. I mean, and then then at the same time, once we passed it, there were some problems implementing it because we did it in record time. I mean, this is one of the times Congress has really shown for the American people. We argue a lot about all these existential issues, but when COVID strikes or wildfire strikes, Democrats, Republicans get down to business and deliver in the United States Congress. And American people ought to take some comfort in that. You know, with all the election stuff coming up, they ought to feel a little bit better. So, you know, we were able to even modify it. Well, once we passed it, there were some problems in implementation, the time period by which people could use it, what you could use it for. We agreed, again, bipartisanly, to change that a little bit to make it more responsive to our business folks and the people that they employ. So that was really, really good. I feel good about that. We're going to have more to go in the next Congress, and COVID and the wildfire response is going to be front and center for my office. That is the most important thing to my constituents right now, making sure they get back on their feet through the COVID issues, learn not to fear but respect that virus, learn how to coexist with it, get the homes rebuilt if that's what you want to do. I was just on the phone today with different insurance companies. We've had the FEMA director out, the FEMA assistant director out, getting Oregon and my district the attention it needs to make sure that these guys know just how serious a tragedy it is for our folks. And there's other bigger issues that we'll hopefully have a chance to spend more time on. I'm working on a big climate change initiative with a friend of mine, David McKinley, Republican from West Virginia, trying to drive power plant emissions to near zero over the next 30 years and mirror a little bit of what Oregon has been trying to do and talking about in the state legislature. And we're also trying to boost career and technical education. I think that is coming front and center as some of us baby boomers retire, as a very important family wage job place where you don't have to incur a ton of debt. I think that's going to be huge. And I really like to work on prescription drugs. That is an area that Republicans and Democrats, even the president agrees, prices are too high. I passed 2 bills that would reduce the cost of prescription drugs for folks and I'd like to do a bigger package where we can actually negotiate prices for seniors, just like they do for veterans, for goodness sakes. They should be able to negotiate lower prices too. So some bigger ticket items also out there.
In terms of the wildfires, do you plan to more address the ones that already happened, or are you looking at proactively figuring out what to do when this happens again in the future?
Yeah, both, to be very obvious. One, get the people back on their feet, clean up the debris in these communities, get them started again. It could be an opportunity. A lot of the systems in some of these towns, like up in the canyon and up in Otis, are a little out of date. Septic systems, water systems. This could be an opportunity to rebuild those a little bit with federal help. These communities don't have a lot of money. They're going to need a lot of federal help. I think also how we deal with these fires has got to change. The climate change initiative stuff that I talked about just a moment ago is part of it. Climate change in general, getting back into these Paris Accords so we can negotiate with China and India, get their emissions down. They're the bigger culprit, to be honest. And then also deal with, how do we protect ourselves from these wildfires in the future? They're going to come more often. I don't think this is a 1 in 100-year event. I think this is unfortunately going to be a more regular event because of climate change. So we need to do more forest management. We need to get in the forest, thin them out, do some prescribed burning. I think we need to do more vegetative management. Not this Congress, but the Congress before that. I passed a vegetative management bill that gave the utilities the power to begin to negotiate more thoughtfully with the Forest Service and BLM to protect those power lines, and they haven't had a chance. The rules haven't been written. They're just now starting to be implemented. We saw in this wildfire how important that's going to be to make sure that these power line tracks don't have dangerous vegetation and trees in their way or nearby. So those types of things I think are going to be extremely important to reduce the catastrophic nature of these fires. Maybe even looking at historically we've let some of these wildfires burn. They're small and in a remote location. The Beachy Creek fires, part of that started out as a small Beachy Creek fire, but we were only dumping water on that. It was close to Detroit. We have to figure out, I think, a smarter way to deal with them, because that was part of the problem with the Detroit fire. It wasn't just the down power lines, contrary to what is reported. So yeah, there's some things we need to do proactively to help prevent those catastrophic fires.
Great. Mark, do you have any more questions?
Congressman, were you punished, penalized in any fashion for your lack of work for Nancy Pelosi for Speaker?
I thought I was a pawn for Nancy Pelosi. That's what my opponent says.
Did I freeze or did?
No, I think we did all right. She respects that I come from a different part of the world, and frankly, I think she's done a much better job this past Congress than she had prior. But to my knowledge, I haven't been particularly punished. I'm still on the same committee I was on beforehand. I'm still very outspoken when I think she's doing a good job. When she's not doing a good job, I'm very outspoken too. Same thing with the White House. Not a Trump fan at all, but I will work with him when it works for my district. And that's what you got to do if you're in Congress. You're never going to have all these people you agree with all the time. I don't agree with my family all the time, but you still got to respect them. You got to work with them and make it work for the people of the 5th Congressional District here in Oregon. I think I do a very good job of that.
Great. Well, that's all for you too, Mark. I can just ask the fun question then. So we're asking every candidate the same fun question at the end of every interview. This time around, we're asking, what's the most awkward or embarrassing thing that's happened on Zoom or Google Meets or whatever in the last 6+ months of quarantine?
Well, I'd say probably when I thought the Zoom was off and I was still talking about how that call didn't go very well.
Who was that with? Can I know?
No, you cannot know. It was not a very good moment. So Mr. Schrader here, Congressman Schrader's got to make sure he hits that leave button much more assertively going forward.
Good call. Good call. All right. Well, I think that's it. I'm sorry you couldn't be here to talk with your opponent. So it is what it is, I guess. But yeah. And this issue is going to be out October 14th. So
okay.
Keep us posted for that.
Very good. Thank you guys for taking the time. Appreciate it.
Have a good day. Goodbye.
Be safe out there.